You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. I'm here to talk to you about, wait, whose show is this anyway? I don't even know. I'm just one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is, of course, every single episode, the one and only John Mills. How are you doing, John?
Well, I've become so self-referential that I have become the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. One has no idea where I begin and where I end. However, if you follow me around, you'll just be back at the beginning.
See, I was thinking that you were just going to talk about yourself in third person because you're so self-referential. So you'd just be like, well, John Mills says that John Mills thinks that John Mills would like to have happen. So,
I really think that would be a more interesting way to attend meetings at work. If I'm completely honest, just sit there and just be like, well, John Mills thinks we shouldn't move forward with this project in its current state. John Mills thinks that actually you've given me a good idea. I'm going to see how that goes tomorrow.
I'm glad that I could be of service. But, well, before we dive into talking about our next part of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we want to thank you for joining us. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to this podcast. You'll get all of the episodes here in the 602 Club as soon as they drop, as well as, of course, Assembling Avengers and Snyder Cuts. You can also find us all over social media. We're under the name at the 602 Club on whatever they call Twitter these days. We're on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM with the entire network. There's a listeners-only discussion group there on Facebook you can join called the Babel Conference. And you can find us online at Trek.fm. Plus, go over to Patreon and support the network so all of these shows keep coming to you each and every week at patreon.com/TrekFM. John, I've got a question for you as we dive into She-Hulk today. And one of the questions is this. I think one of the most problematic characters that they've had in the MCU, in the sense of not really knowing what to do with the character, I think especially since it had such a rocky start, was the Hulk. And
yes.
So I guess the question that as we dive into She-Hulk that I was thinking of as, watching the show, why are we then adding another Hulk character when we can't even figure out what to do with the original Hulk character?
It's a fair question. Obviously, this is my first time coming to the series. The fatigue thing, no need to revisit it if anybody's been listening up to this point. But if this is your first time joining us for Assembling Avengers, everything in Phase 4 is new to me because after Endgame, I hit fatigue early on in Phase 4 and I tapped out, and we're using this as an excuse to drag me through Phase 4. When I first heard about the She-Hulk project, whenever the news released, I was hopeful because She-Hulk was actually a very clever comic book. It was a pretty good title, and it was enjoyable, and it was, it was something that didn't take itself too seriously, which was a welcome change from the typical superhero formula that was so, very Sturm and Drang at certain points. X-Men especially, the X-Men never lightened up ever, and then She-Hulk had a bit of levity to it, and it was like, oh, okay, this is cute, this is different, this is fun. So I was hoping for something that would sort of tap into that, and I will inevitably talk about fan reaction at some point during the episode, but I was told by one friend who was a dyed-in-the-wool Marvel cultist since the beginning, like he did not respond well to the series. And I had another friend who responded on the lower end of lukewarm and everything. So I was immediately put off going into this by thinking, well, gosh, this is a title I really thought they had a shot to do something with. And by all accounts, they kind of missed it. They missed their opportunity. To your point, to finally take a Hulk property and say, we're going to do, but at the same time, you know what? Let me throw that back at you. She-Hulk is known for all of those things I went through, but Taika Waititi sort of steals its thunder with Love and Thunder, but sort of steals the thunder with Ragnarok and Love and Thunder by sort of giving that humorous take on everything before She-Hulk gets a chance to get there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that and just kind of her role in comics. And I've never read any of her comics. I know she's had some incredible runs and people that have really loved the character. Like you said, she kind of did some things that were either new in comics or just really did it well, breaking the fourth wall, being very self-referential, her being, too, this very confident female superhero character who actually loved her alter ego. There's just a lot of things about this character that are really interesting. And the idea of, bringing her into the MCU is it's not a bad idea or anything. I do think that the interesting part of it is, like you mentioned, though, we've had Thor by Waititi. We've had the Guardians of the Galaxy. So we've already had two major parts of this franchise go in that direction of being very humor driven. And, the type of humor where it is biting and cutting a lot of, especially with the Guardians films, right? That biting kind of sarcastic humor, and just, at the same time, overall goofiness as well. So it is strange to me to try and, kind of cram her into the MCU at this point when we've already been kind of doing a lot of the things that this character is known for. And I guess the biggest part to me, it did really come down to the question of, I can't understand why you're trying to put another Hulk into the series when you haven't been able to figure out what to do with the original Hulk in the series, and who has basically played third or fourth fiddle to every movie he's been in. And so I just, to me, that was a really strange part of this whole idea of bringing this character in. Now, as with every Marvel character that we're bringing in, I'm always going in hoping that it's going to be good. I think one of the things that had me hopeful was this idea of bringing in an actress who was really known, put herself on the map with some sci-fi stuff. And Tatiana Maslany, regardless of how I feel about the series itself, I actually think she gives a great performance as the character. She's enjoyable to watch. She's funny when she needs to be. Like, she's magnetic. Like, the way that she says all the lines that she needs to and really hits the delivery on all of them, I thought was great. And so I think one of the biggest pluses was they cast somebody who could really bring this character to life, especially when a big part of this is going to be giving your voice to a character who's going to be completely CGI. And so to be able to really pull that off, you need it to be done well. And I thought she pulls it off beautifully, actually.
I think she inhabits the character. Yes, I agree with you. She absolutely becomes this character. For any of the other shortcomings of the series, she's not one of them. She absolutely delivers what she's supposed to deliver here. But since you mentioned the CGI, she just does the voice of basically a cartoon character for a significant portion of the series. That's actually one of those things that I want to address head on, because you do have an actress who is inhabiting the role and is charismatic and knows how to play the camera. I do not understand why the animation for her character, for her alter ego, is so flat. It looks two-dimensional. The lighting is off. I do not understand why they don't seem to have her on set on the stilts, walking around the way Alan Tudyk did in Rogue One, or even the way that Mark Ruffalo does as Hulk. I could tell people weren't interacting with the right sight lines and stuff like that. And that was very frustrating to me, because you had an actress where you could have had her there and mapped over magnificently, kept her face, everything, yet they did not. I will not understand that. I know, look, I will not understand. I put that in quotes. I know it's cheaper. It just makes sense financially. But I don't know why, if you're doing a prestige show that additionally carries the weight of it as this is another crack at creating a memorable female character to add to the MCU lore, why you wouldn't say safety's off, spare no expense, go full tilt, and have Tatiana in every single shot that you can, and put her in green makeup if you have to, and just map over everything else and use camera trickery and everything, because that's the way to go. And that, I think the show would have benefited from it tremendously.
I agree with you, because I think one of the things that you need to be utilizing all of the tricks to bring this character to life. You need to be utilizing motion control, capture, with people doing the fight scenes, so that you can create them with these, massive characters that are fighting each other. And you need to be, using maybe facial replacement on somebody who is a bodybuilder or something, or whatever it takes to make this character look good. But I mean, I think that you're 100% right in calling out the fact that the character does work on She-Hulk as well as every other CGI element in this show, as well as just the show itself, looks entirely lackluster and cheap. There's just absolutely nothing about this show that looks like, they put any effort into it. Now, that's not the case, right? Like, I know all those artists are working their tails off, but I think as we've been moving through phase 4, I think what we're seeing here comes down to the fact that they tried to cram so many things into phase 4 that they were not allowing their CGI artists and their compositing work and all of those things the time to do the work they need to do to actually bring these kind of things to life, right? This isn't, the early 2000s where we're going to excuse, what, or I guess even earlier than that, but what Babylon 5 looks like, because they chose to do CGI instead of models and stuff, right? Because we're way past that. And so if you really want to make this stuff work, you have to make us believe that these people are actually on screen, especially when they're not. And, of course, they just never do that with the character of She-Hulk.
Well, it's also something where I have no idea off the top of my head whether the directors and directors of photography for the episodes have the necessary experience in setting up effects shots. Because I will pair this up with what you're saying. There's cost cutting, there's volume of work, there's reshoots, all of these things that go into it that shorten the window of time to do the proper development, to run the servers at full speed and capacity and all of that type of stuff. All of these things go into it, but additionally, it's a criticism I've thrown at Star Wars series using the volume. Greig Fraser is a friggin' out-of-the-box master at using the volume. That first season of The Mandalorian, any episode he worked on, it looked like you were there. But then you see later directors and DPs come in, and you see its limitations because They're still learning the tool. And it's like, if you're going to have an effects heavy show like this one, have a crash course. Make it a day. Make it 2. Make it a boot camp where you sit down with everybody that's working on it and you have people who have significant experience and you say, look, I know you want to do this. This is how you're going to make that work. This is where it's tricky. Mm-hmm. Why not have that sort of thing in place so that these people who are working on, who are directing the show, who are lighting the show, who are staging the camera shots, have the best chance at the most success, so that people don't go down the rabbit hole of what we're doing, where we're like, I don't get why the CG doesn't look better.
Yeah.
I feel terrible saying that because, like you said, they're working their butts off at the effects houses, but they only have so much time and ability to do everything that's necessary.
Well, and the problem with doing that is that you're just undermining your show. Because, you need these characters to feel real. You need them to feel as though they are as real as the physical characters that are actually on screen, that are real people, and when that's not happening, you're taking away, like, the show is called She-Hulk. So when She-Hulk is on screen, I need to literally believe that she's there because the effects are so good. I buy them. And never at any point in the show do I buy that she's there. She always just looks like a cartoon character. And that hurts the character in general. I mean, and there's only so much Tatiana can do to bring that character to life with her voice. And I think the problem is that carries over into the rest of the show because, in all honesty, I think one of the biggest detriments to the show outside the CGI is that the show doesn't seem to actually know what to do with the character. It's almost like they want to apologize for the character from the comics, in the sense that She-Hulk is a character who loves her She-Hulk nature. This is one of those series where it really felt like the people writing it needed to be massive fans of the comics and just bring that to life. Because one of the best parts of the MCU is when they have just not apologized for their characters and they've just put them on screen. And I think that's one of the things that, made something like Guardians of the Galaxy work, where Gunn never apologizes for the absolute wackiness it is that those characters are, right? He just never apologizes for the crazy.
Yes.
He embraces it.
I agree on that point. I don't know if I'd be as harsh about their characterization of She-Hulk, because before this turns into like a bash fest, because I want to be very clear. I did not hate this show. I actually thought it started with a lot of promise. There were limitations, and I wasn't in love with it, but the first few episodes, first like 3 or 4 episodes, I was like, okay, let's see where this is going. I didn't get the sense of the wheels really starting to come off a little bit until about the midway point. I was like, uh-oh. And it felt really at that point like the writers were writing themselves into a corner. And I was hoping for a producer to step in and say, whoa, hold on. You're not going to turn Daredevil into a joke. You're not going to turn him into a gag. The only reference
Kevin
to Daredevil
tried, but there's only so much he could do.
Okay, first and foremost, those writers in the last episode, if those were actors, they didn't convey it effectively. If those were the actual writers of the show, they needed to hire actors. Like, that scene didn't work at all. And the whole Kevin thing. But my issue is, you make a reference to Daredevil where the guy is the designer of superhero clothes, which is sort of just ripped off from Incredibles, but okay, I got it. And you have a hat box with Daredevil's helmet in it. That's a moment where I go, yes. And then when Daredevil shows up later, I say, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Why? This is one of the most respected characters to have ever graced the screen from Marvel, who has a Netflix series that everybody who ever watched it absolutely adores. and you're going to make him a punchline. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. I think it was a waste of talent and crossover. Bringing Daredevil in actually makes sense. I like it. They're lawyers. They have every reason to inhabit each other's universes, as it were, corner of the universe. Wong has always been funny when he's appeared in the MCU films. In this, they kind of dumb him down. I don't like that. Yeah. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. It's not a joke. I mean, like, I get it. I get it. It's a comedy series. But the comedy should come from somebody like Wong not being the joke or in on the joke. Everybody's making the joke, and he should be like the adult in the room that's saying, knock it off. You don't understand. There are demons coming out here. It's not a joke about a Paris Hilton type character getting drunk with him and watching Sopranos. That's not funny to me. Yeah. That's dumbing the character down.
So I think one of the things that you're really hitting on, and I could not agree with you more, is, in all honesty, we take these characters and we just make complete jokes out of them. Whether it's Wong, whether it's Daredevil. I mean, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
But the thing is, I think it comes from an impulse where it works with Blonsky. It's actually kind of clever with Blonsky. I like what they did with him. I thought that was funny. Where he's a villain in the sense that he's like, you know what? I don't want to get in fights with the Hulk anymore. I want to have terrible men's only club where I get paid money to come out and spew a bunch of stuff to make guys feel better about themselves. Yeah. That's funny. That's like, oh, no. I'm not transforming to cause any problems. I just want to make some money on the side here, okay? Like, this is my self-help gig. Like, that's funny. And I think that's a good impulse for them to have followed. It just got too broad.
I think that it just comes down to the fact, for me, is this inability for the writers to actually find a balance, right? You need to understand, like, the entire series, where it's going and how all of this works. But I think you need to just find respect for the characters and who they are, and make them work in the series without dumbing them down or kind of changing who they are in any way. And again, I mean, you brought it up, but I mean, a character like Daredevil is a character that you just, you can't do that with. That character is such a pivotal part of the Marvel universe and the comics, and the respect that people have for that character and everything, and you're just doing that character a disservice. I think you said it well, what they do with Blonsky. Again, that really works in this show. But there's just, I think the thing that I really come to is, like, there's no nuance to it, right? It's like they painted with a very broad brush when it came to the humor, and it hit everybody, and everybody ended up on the same humor wavelength. But that's not who these characters actually are.
Right. The comedy needs to come. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But to give another example of where I would say they have a good impulse, but it misfires in the execution, is when they recreate the 1970s Hulk TV show opening. Mm-hmm. That's your stinger. You have a hint of it when she's off and she's trying to get her, she's sitting there in the last episode and she's like, oh my gosh, and she's having self-doubt and everything. And then you hear the narrator come on as like, when she gets angry. She's like, whoa, no. No, wrong series. We're not doing the narrator thing. That's cute. And then you save that fake 1970s opening for the stinger. That's your stinger sort of thing. That's what I would say. So it just, I think it starts off well enough. It starts off fairly clever with Titania, trying to infringe on her name to sell beauty products. Cute storyline. Liked it. What they're doing with Blonsky. Liked it. The Hulk stuff didn't really... And it's unfortunate because it's part of the setup. Didn't really work, I think, as well as they thought it would. And even though each episode's only 30 minutes, it feels too stretched. This is another series where I'm like, yeah, this could have been wrapped up a lot quicker.
Well, I think the problem, like you mentioned there, the length of the show. Unfortunately, the show is absolutely way too long. The show is 9 episodes. There's no reason for this to be 9 episodes, and I think that's a big problem here as well. They have too many storylines going on as well. I think that's another issue. With the whole idea, like you said, with Titania trying to take her identity basically as She-Hulk, and then you've got the whole thing with Intelligentsia, and then you've got Blonsky and Wong, and it's just like there's no cohesion to this show, and I think that's the thing that's a little bit frustrating. Is that they just don't really find a way to bring it together. It almost, and just, I mean, I think to bring this to where we end up at the end, where they not only break the fourth wall, but they break the narrative wall completely. And to me, they just destroy the MCU in this, where they make the MCU itself an absolute and utter complete joke. And they've really hurt the MCU because of it. Because of the way they decided to end this show, they've made the entire thing ridiculous in a way that I don't know how you actually recover from.
They break the brand. And I think that the problem with the ultimate ending is the problem with the show, and we'll explain why I end where I end when we talk about our ratings and everything, is the fact that once we get into the Disney Plus screen and she swings through and she goes through, it's at that point where you start not just questioning what's going on, but it starts winding up being such a meta self-criticism of Marvel as a whole. It's almost as if it's looking back at the audience and making us feel foolish for caring and investing emotionally in everything, because it's all just a big joke. And additionally, by going in and having the Kevin robot and talking about there's just so much stuff where it's just not necessary to treat it like that, to go to that extreme. And I think it's also a tacit admission that they literally wrote themselves into a corner and didn't know how to get out of it. And then somebody in that room broke their hand from high-fiving themselves so hard about coming up with this ending.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's what it is they took the easy way out. And they thought it was clever. And it's like, it's not clever to do this. This was the easy way out. Fourth Wall's fine. I love Fourth Wall. I don't think they did it particularly well. Like, you go back, you watch just one season of Malcolm in the Middle. That's how you break the fourth wall. That's a fourth wall break. That's what you do. And it just baffles me that people still can't quite get that right. But then, that end... people, here come the pitchforks and torches, Matt. I'm sorry. But that ending is a Last Jedi moment for Marvel as a whole, where a bunch of people felt a little too comfortable offering some really ideas in a blender meta commentary on everything. And it just complete misfire. This is a dud. This is a complete dud.
Yeah. Yeah, I could not agree with you more. In all honesty, for me, this, you mentioned that you felt like there's some things that were working for you. And I think for me, the things that worked here were the performance by Maslany. And I think she is completely underserved by everything that happens in the show for the most part. Like like you said, they think themselves so clever. And in the end, it comes off as so lazy. It comes off as not well thought out. And I think this is maybe the show the most of everything so far in phase 4, where it's like you are trying to do too many things in one phase and in 1 year. And this is one of the places where I feel like that really comes out big time.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I honestly, I don't really have anything else to say about this show. I don't want to be one of those people who just sits here and beats up on something over and over and over again. And so I guess my main question for you then is, in the end, what do you end up rating this show?
This is pretty tough for me, because there were things that I thought were, like I said, the first few episodes, I was going with it. I was okay. This is kind of slick. I'm kind of digging this. And it's not till about the halfway point, but in all honesty, and it only gets this because I really think Maslany is really super. It's heartbreaking, because she is just bringing an A game that the rest of this show cannot support. And for that reason, it winds up with a 1.5.
Well said. I'm right there with you. That's exactly what this show gets. In fact, this show could slide to a 1 at some point. And
possible, yeah.
And so I think probably I am grading on a curve here, which seems weird at 1.5. And I think that the reason is because, again, I really like Maslany. She's so fun to watch, even when the ridiculousness on screen is happening, right? I think she does everything she can to make this work, and she unfortunately just can't. And that is not her fault. And, in the hands of better writers, maybe I would like to see this character again. But unfortunately, at this point, I'm having a hard time trusting Marvel to do that. So with all of that said, and where that ended up ratings-wise, where are you going to place She-Hulk, Attorney at Law?
All right, deep breath. Let's go through this list. We're used to this by now. I'm going to say it as fast as I can for everybody, okay? Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Okay. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Iron Man, Avengers Endgame, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Loki, Captain America Civil War, Captain America the First Avenger, Miss Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, The Incredible Hulk, Avengers Infinity War, Thor, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers, Howard the Duck, Moon Knight, WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Spider-Man Far From Home, Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 2, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Age of Ultron, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, Thor Love and Thunder, and forever under the back of my heel as I try to scrape it off of my memory, Eternals.
Well, fantastic. I'm going to go with the Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, No Way Home, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Endgame, Civil War, The First Avenger, Black Panther, Guardians 2, Ant-Man, What If, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi, The Incredible Hulk, Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Homecoming, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Loki, Avengers, Miss Marvel, Far From Home, Infinity War, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Quantumania, The Dark World, Iron Man 2, Thor, Howard the Duck, Moon Knight, Black Widow, Age of Ultron, Captain Marvel, WandaVision, She-Hulk, Ragnarok, Love and Thunder, and of course, Eternals.
Well, there you go. It's always fun being reminded of how our lists differ ever so slightly here and there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever so slightly. It's like mine is the correct answers and yours is the one that people, you were too far away to cheat perfectly. So that's
well,
okay,
John, if people wanted to catch up with you and see what else you've got going on, where would they find you?
Well, gosh, you can find me online as Kessel Junkie. You can find me right over on the Nerd Party Network, co-hosting 2 shows. One is called House Lights that I co-host with the noodly armed Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser. And I co-host another show called Aggressive Negotiations, which is a Star Wars podcast, which I co-host with you, Mr. Matthew Rushing.
And you can find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network doing the Literary Treks, The Orb, Warp 5, Artificial Tango, Saddle Up, and, of course, the main 602 Club feed. You can also find me over on the Nerd Party Network outside of Aggressive Negotiations with Owlpost, where we talk about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. But thank you so much for joining us.
Avengers?